Ladies and gentlemen, please be informed that we cordially invite you to be seated at the prescribed table in this room because the agenda will proceed right now.
Distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen,
thank you for returning to your seat and welcome back to the 8th SEAMS-UGM International Conference on Mathematics and its Application 2019.
on this next occasion, please allow us to deliver today's agenda.
The first session is a plenary lecture 3 by the Honorable Speaker, Professor Dr. Engku Muhammad Nazri Engku Abu Bakar from University Utara Malaysia with a moderator.
The second session is a plenary lecture 4 by the Honorable Speaker, Prof. Shelton Peiris from University of Sydney with moderator.
And the third session is a plenary lecture 5 by the Honorable Speaker, Professor Chen Zehua from National University of Singapore with a moderator.
Ladies and gentlemen,
proceeding with the first session, and without further ado, we would like to invite the moderator, Dr. Nanang Susyanto from Universitas Gadjah Mada to come to the stage and to start the first session. Please welcome.
Thank you for the time. Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so after enjoying our lunch, so let's enjoy another interesting lecture. It will be given by Professor Dr. Engku Muhammad Nazri bin Tengku Abu Bakar. So I would like to invite Professor Dr. Engku Muhammad Nazri to come to the stage. Yeah, so the topic is very interesting. It is related to research and publications, and I note some keywords which are KPI, right? Key performance indicators, and also collaboration. So it would be very, very interesting. Professor Engku Muhammad Nazri, he comes from School of Quantitative Science, University Utara, Malaysia. So Professor Nazri, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nanang. All right, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon, everyone. The topic that I'm going to talk this afternoon is something that is very, very light, because I noticed that my presentation time is after lunch, and I'm sure everyone will be sleepy. Therefore, the topic of my presentation is to share our experience in fulfilling the research and publication agenda through some creative thinking and smart collaboration. I am very humbled to be invited as one of the invited speakers here, because I personally don't consider myself as a mathematician. I used to be a mathematician for a while, until I joined this university, which is a management-based university. So at our university, we are not really encouraged to do basic research. The focus should be more on applied research. Therefore, I pretty much forget about my mathematical skills and shifted to operations research. So we all know that research and publication agenda is now one of the top priorities for all the universities, especially in the race towards achieving the university ranking. Whether we like it or not, we have to be in the game. And the importance of this agenda is evidenced by the total amount of money allocated for this activity by the university. And it is being put in the strategic planning of the university as well. And in our case, or in cases of all universities, I believe, this publication agenda will be given or distributed to the academic schools and research institutes based on the number of academicians in that faculty or school. And a big chunk of the KPIs will be given to the research institutes, because normally in the research institute, the academicians who are members of the institutes are very interested in doing research, in writing papers and so on, compared to those who are not in the institutes. So for our university, having realized that we need to increase our publication, we need to increase on the money generated by the university due to the recent government cut by the university, and to increase collaboration with other parties, our Vice Chancellor instructed for each school to have at least one research institute. So at our school, the research institute is called the Institute of Strategic Industrial Decision Modeling, and it was formed in January 2018, so it is relatively new. And at the moment we have 5 research fellows and 10 associate fellows. Unfortunately, when it first started, I was asked to lead the institute. So I had to take the role, and it's quite a challenging role, to be honest. And let's go to the publication KPIs. So for the institute, we are required to produce quite a number of index journals in ISI, Web of Science is now a Scopus Index. Last year it was not so bad. This year is getting worse. The KPI is higher. Last time 4 Scopus Index per lecturer. Now it has gone up to 6, and not just 6 publications, but it has to be indexed in at least a Q2 journal. So the pressure is getting worse. But we managed to work on that one because it is being tied with the promotion and with the assessment at the end of the year. So most of our researchers in the institute are focusing on publishing under index journals. We need to also, as much as possible, publish original textbooks. But this is not really that popular among us because it is very time consuming and the marks given is not really that high. But some of us are doing it. Index conference proceedings, no problem, because we all attend conferences and we have achieved that KPI rather easily. We are also expected to produce articles in non-index journals, and the number for that is also very, very high, and other publications such as case studies, chapter in books, and so on. The major problem that we are facing now is for the non-index journal articles, because most of the researchers in the institutes are not willing to focus their time in publishing their articles for non-index journals because the points is very little given to them when it comes to the assessment at the end of the year, and also to be given the promotion. But the KPI is there, and we are required to publish. Otherwise, we will be penalized, and perhaps next year the institute might be closed because we fail to fulfill the KPI. So the focus now is basically more on the non-index journal articles. So our strategy at the institute is, since not that many people are willing to publish under non-index journals, I have to play a role in facilitating the process. So the strategy is now to persuade my colleagues to think of this activity as a contingency plan. Or in other words, doing a plan that you do when you have nothing else to do, when you are bored, and when you are sick of working with your high index journal publication. Focus on this one, on your spare time perhaps. You know, because to get your article published in an index journal, it might take a minimum 1 year, up to 3 years. So you may not be able to fulfill your KPI. So why not you spare some of your time doing some easy writing and publish it in a non-index journal, but it is, we have to make sure that it is a reviewed, a refereed journal. So our strategy is, this is our institute. We go to our partner, and in this case, our partners for the time being, at the very beginning, we went to visit other schools in the university. We talked to them, we brainstormed with them, we conducted a few workshops asking for problems from them because most of us don't have experiences, working experiences outside of the university context. Therefore, it is kind of difficult for us to get realistic problems to turn into researchable activity and turn the result into an article. So we share with them, and then we ask them to share their problems that they are doing with us. And from there, we created those into researchable problems, and we work together on the problem, and hopefully the result will be in the form of a journal article. And some of the journal articles managed to penetrate the Scopus Index journals. So it's a good collaboration. So let me share you some of the problems that we managed to obtain from our visits and from our discussion with other schools. The first one that I'm going to share is the problem with the language center. One of the teachers who at the time was teaching an English language communication class complained about her students. She said she likes to group their students into small groups to encourage the students to communicate because in this English language communication class, the students are the international students who are not ready to enroll in a normal curriculum setting because they have not fulfilled the English requirement. So therefore, they need to undergo this class. So initially, she divided her students into small groups consisting of 4 students, and the composition of the groups are up to the students, meaning that the students are free to select who they want to be in their group. So there was heavy communication involved, but unfortunately the communication was not in English. It was in their own mother tongue language. So the objective was not achieved. And therefore, she wanted to improve on the composition of the group. And when we look at the problem, we realize, this can be easily solved using our technique, the simple mathematics model. You don't have to go for a very complicated model. So what we did was, we applied a 0-1 integer programming model, and we asked them, and we asked the teacher, what exactly that you want to do? You know, how do you want to divide the group? So she mentioned something about the students' group composition, whereby, if possible, in that group, there will be only one person speaking the same language, meaning that there will not be 2 persons speaking the same language. So if you have 4 members in the group, all 4 members should be speaking different language. And also there should be a composition of female and males in the group, and so on and so on. And the objective function for the model will be to maximize the chances of active participation among group members. So we solved this problem, and the article was already published. All right, the next school that we went to was the School of Tourism and Hospitality Management. We managed to get lots of meaningful problems, interesting problems involving the tourism industry. And for this particular case, it was about the training restaurant that we have on our campus, which is used for the students to practice cooking and managing the restaurant. So they have it once a week, whereby they open the restaurant between 12 to 2 p.m. And the objective is to train the students and also to make some money for the school. So when we talk to them, and when we ask them, do you have any problem when you run the training restaurant? And they said, no, we don't have any problem. Everything is smoothly run. Because we limit the number of customers to come in, and we have many students handling the restaurant, so we have no issue. So nothing should be done to make things better. And then we asked them, how many students do you have within that 2 hours? And they said 20. So what is your objective of this one? And they said one of the objectives is to make sure that students will get a proper training so that when they go out, they will be prepared with the real situation. So we asked again, but with 20 students, do you think they have the chance to feel the real life experience? How many of them get to cook? How many of them get to serve the customers? And when they explain and they say, that's where the problem is. You don't give the students enough chance to feel the real setting because you have too many students. So you need to re-strategize. Perhaps you need to have the restaurant open more than once a week. Or perhaps you need more than one restaurant. Okay? So one way of identifying how many more slots to be opened and how many new training restaurants to be opened is through a discrete event simulation model, whereby when we simulate, we would be able to identify the utilization time of the cook, how busy is the restaurant, whether there will be a queue among the attendees or the customers going to the restaurant. And we have already completed this one as well, and is in the process of sending it for publication. Another example from the same school. We found a cave in the Langkawi Island. When we said we, I meant our Vice Chancellor. And somehow or other, he managed to persuade the Langkawi Island Authority to give the cave to our university to run and manage as part of our collaboration with the state of Kedah, where our university is in, and to help improve the tourism in Langkawi Island. And then when he came back, he asked some people from the School of Tourism to do some preliminary study to identify if we were to develop this cave, who should we market the cave to? So this group of people from the Tourism and Hospitality Management conducted the study through a questionnaire, asking lots of questions and costing a lot of money and taking too much time. And the respondents answered the questionnaire without even going to the cave. So how are they going to be able to respond to the questions properly, without experiencing or without going to the cave? And since it's taking a long time, when can they start developing the area? So we suggested okay, you can proceed with your study, wait for the result, no problem. But based on your description, we can give you another approach based on our techniques. So, to show you the technique, we are not going to go to this cave, but rather why don't we focus on one of the locations on our campus, which is the hidden lake, which was found a year ago, hidden somewhere in the jungle behind our campus, and the university is planning to have that place for tourist attraction area also. So the objective is the same, to identify the most potential tourist group for the marketing purposes of the hidden lake. But the process of identifying the group is not through a questionnaire that was sent through Google Forms and sent it to everyone, but rather we identify a few representatives from each of the tourist group types. For example, the excursionists, the day trippers, the backpackers, the extreme tourist groups and so on. So we brought them to the cave, asked them to evaluate the cave based on various factors, and based on, not to the cave, sorry, to the lake, based on various factors by giving weights on the importance of each factor in determining their intention to visit the location. So they gave the weights for the criteria before going to the lake using analytic hierarchy process. And later we brought them to the lake and we asked them to rank the achievement of each of the attributes of the lake using a simple weighted scoring model. So combining the two, we finally managed to identify the correct group for the hidden lake for University Utara Malaysia. Okay. Next, we went to the School of Counseling and Social Work. But they are not really mathematical savvy, so we have to look for problems that is easy enough for us to introduce the aspect of mathematics to them. So in this case, the problem that they are having is basically to schedule counselees so that they can have proper counseling from counselors. At our university, once we get the result of the students at the end of the year, this group, the counselors, will be looking for students who are not performing well, and they are brought later for the counseling session if counseling is needed. However, there are many students who require counseling, and there are not that many counselors that we have, so we need to schedule them properly so that there will be a match between the availability of the students, the availability of the counselors, and the type of problem to be solved with the expertise of the counselors. So in this case, the problem is to solve or to assign counselees to counselors based on the expertise or based on the problem faced by the counselees and the time availability of both the counselees and the counselors. And we also might want to consider the maximization of the counselees' preferences. Perhaps the counselees have certain counselors that they want to work with, or they prefer male counselor instead of female counselor, and vice versa. And similarly, to maximize counselors' preferences, perhaps in the type of problems that they want to counsel, or again, they might prefer a male student instead of female student, and the time preferences as well. And for this problem, we managed to solve the matching problem through assignment model and goal programming. Next, we move to School of Computing. And when we visited the school, they are in the process of arranging the timetabling for their students. And one of the problems that they wanted to do was to arrange the courses, the subjects that their students should be taking every semester. And once that is done, they will make it mandatory for the students to follow the structure, and meaning that the students are no longer allowed to register for the courses that they like, but they are having problem doing so. Part of it is not knowing what are the subjects to put in semester 1, semester 2, semester 3, and semester 4, and so on. So we propose by taking into consideration which subject to be taken in each semester, the prerequisites for the subjects, the minor program subjects, and the elective requirements. So in this case, the objective, or rather the techniques used, is 0-1 integer programming, whereby the variables is which subject to be taken in which semester. And if we cannot get an optimal solution, the other option is to go with goal programming. And the requirement is to balance the total workload or difficulty level across semesters. And to gauge the difficulty level of each subject, initially they wanted to ask the lecturers to give the value of the difficulty. But we disagree in the sense that we might have a different opinion compared to the students. So we ask the alumni to give that input because they have gone through the courses, and they are at a similar level with the current students in a way, so they know better than we do. So in this case, we engage the alumni to give us the input on the difficulty level, and then we use that in our model. And finally, the problem that I would like to share with all of you is with the Student Affairs Department on the budget allocation for student activities. One of the ranking system in Malaysia is called the Setara rating, whereby Setara is for the undergraduate programs. And a large portion of the marks given is on the student activities, student programs handled by the Department of Student Affairs. And we have KPIs in various aspects. For example, for the sports agenda, we have the KPIs. For the culture, we have the KPIs. For the leadership, we have the KPIs, and so on and so on. And normally, the Student Affairs Office will provide some amount of money, and this student body will plan the activities. Unfortunately, when they plan the activities, they didn't even refer to the KPIs. They just simply do it because they think they should be doing it, they like doing it, and so on and so on and so on. And at the end of the day, at the end of the year, when we look at the achievement, we can see that some of the KPIs are not achieved, some of the KPIs are achieved, but we achieve it like 300% more than what we should be achieving. So that's not a good strategy. So we propose, why don't you come up with a proper technique to make sure that when you design the programs, you can tally with the KPIs, you can tie up with the budget allocation, and so on and so on. So we came up with this model using marginal analysis to identify the cost to run each program, utility theory, how each program will contribute to the points under Setara rating, and then we use analytic hierarchy process again to identify the level of interest among students to join the program, and 0-1 integer programming for the selection of which activities to be selected and to be given money. And in doing so, we make sure that the KPIs can be achieved, the money will be enough, and so forth. And after the completion of this activity, they had another problem. They said, okay, once we have these activities selected, how do we schedule the activities? Because they don't want the activities to be run at the same time. And if that happens, then there will be competition among activities. And at the end of the day, we don't have enough participants for some of the activities. So we have another problem, and we solve that problem also through a scheduling model. Okay, so these are some of the examples that we can share with you, and how easy it was for us to get real problems and turn that into publishable work. Okay, but it's not easy sailing. There are some issues and problems faced when we visited them and dealing with them, trying to convince them to accept our way of solving things. We told them, you can proceed with your own way, but open your mind and let us enter your field with our techniques. All right, so some of the problems. Number one, it is not easy to convince them on the acceptability of the techniques, because some of the techniques are relatively unheard of, from their view of point, and they are a bit skeptical whether our works are acceptable or not in their field. So we have to coax them, say, don't worry, if you cannot send the articles to your journals, send it to our journals, in the applied journals. And finally we managed to convince them. And most of them, unfortunately, are still stuck with the concept of population, sampling frame, statistical testing, model validation, and so on. For example, when we solve the integer programming model, they will be asking, how do you validate the model? When we said, it's easy, once you get the solution that satisfies all the constraints, the model is already validated. And they will be looking at you like, are you crazy? Is it that simple? And I said, yes, that's how it is done. So not that easy to convince them, but we manage. Not sure whether we manage 100% to do that. And they kept asking us on the use of hypothetical. They also asked us about, what is your hypothesis? How come you don't have any hypothesis in your model? Because they are so used to doing everything statistically. Okay, I give you another example. There was one problem with the tourism group. They wanted to study on the survivability of the traditional delicacies. So we asked them, can you select 5 kueh just to try it out? And it took them 3 months to get back to us. And I said, what took you so long? Oh, because we have to survey the students. We have to survey the community to get the list of the kuehs. And I was like, you are the expert. You just pick 5 and we go with that 5 just to see whether the kuehs can survive. So that's how difficult it is to convince the non-mathematicians, the non-statisticians of our tools. And the use of hypothetical or simulated data is frowned upon. They said, can you do that? If you use hypothetical data, if you use simulated data, then it's not going to be real. So we had to explain to them, we are developing models. We just want to show that the model works. So if you have your data, then you put in the data inside the model. What we are doing now is we show you how to use the model using hypothetical data that we created, but as much as possible the data should mimic the reality. The data should be logical. Okay? And their creativity needs to be challenged also. In this case, it's not just their creativity, but our creativity also among the researchers in the institutes. We are so used to our old way of doing things, and somehow we block our brain and we cannot expand the horizon to think about a problem and turn it into a new opportunity creatively. And I think that's the end of my presentation. So let's collaborate on writing papers, and thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Nazri, for a very nice presentation. So we should be proud as mathematicians. Because today, this morning, we got a lecture from Professor Shelton, how to use mathematics in assessing risk. But right now, as Professor Nazri told that we can use light techniques in mathematics to solve several problems in the real world. So I think it is very interesting. So now I would like to open maybe one or two questions because the time is limited. So any questions? Yes.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Givari and I would like to ask about output versus outcome discussion, because if we use hypothetical or maybe historical data that mimic real life, yes, we can measure the fit on the model itself. But what about the outcome? Because not necessarily the outcome will follow the simulated output, and how to communicate effectively to the business stakeholders. Thank you.
Okay. So in our case, normally our plan is to show how the model works, right? It satisfies the objective functions, it satisfies all the constraints, and it satisfies the needs of the problem. But true enough, for us to have the article published in a very short time, we don't have time to collect the real data, right? So that's why we use simulated data or man-made data by visualizing that the problem is this way. And to convince the other parties on the potential of the model, we ask them to give the data. And we ask them, if you were to solve this problem, what sort of data do you need? So they say, oh, we need the KPI for each activity. Okay, give the KPI to me. If you cannot give the exact figure, you can give an estimation. How much does it cost for you to run one activity, for example? And normally, if you run this activity, how many students will be involved? So they will be giving us that data. So we put the data inside the model, and then we get the output, and then we show it back to them. Does the output make sense to you? Do you think this is manageable? Is it feasible? And if they say yes, then the problem is settled. And if they say no, then we ask them again, where do you think the problem is? Show it to us. And then perhaps the way we model it is wrong. Then we go back and look again at the model and change it if it is necessary. So that's what we do basically. And talking about this, I think I kind of regret doing it, because now the demand comes from many schools asking us to be a part of their team, research team members, so much so that we are now very overwhelmed with the amount of work that we have to do. But I guess the main objective to introduce mathematics and statistics and operations research techniques to other schools are successful in this regard.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No more questions? Okay, thank you very much, Professor Nazri. So this session is about decision sciences. So let me close with the following remarks. So the futures depend on our decisions, so decide everything optimally. That are what we should do as mathematicians. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll return the time to the MC. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody.